Well, Piyali, good to see you. And I really want to say thank you for your lovely Substack essay about your relationship with your husband, Dasang. And there was a piece of advice you mentioned in there, which was given by your teacher, Geshe Dojtamdula. And what was that?
So many years ago, I asked my dear teacher, Geshe Dorji Zamdul La, if what he thought about marriage, and his advice was, well, of course, he said that he can't really advise on marriage because he's a monk. But he did say something very profound that really stuck with me for years, which is if a union can bring benefit to all sentient beings or cast a wider net, that is one that is profound instead of a union that just brings pleasure to two people who are involved.
Hmm, very intriguing. And I do still wonder, can a union, a marriage of a man and woman, or man, man, woman, woman, can that bring about the benefit of all sentient beings?
Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. Everything's peaceful and at ease. Everything will be
Welcome to A Mom and a Monk, a podcast where we discuss life and this beautiful, complex, and always crazy world, all with the light of the Buddha's wisdom.
And then bring the precious Buddha Dharma and its wisdom into the chaotic world of parenting. I am Piyali Tenzin Chudin, a mother to a 9-year-old strong willed girl living in the Himalayas.
And I'm Lobsang Tunya, a monk who is Tibetan Buddhist monk whose monastery is in India currently for personal reasons, staying in the United States. And so I want to throw it to you, Piali, that question. How can a relationship, because as you said, a monk can't really advise on marriage or even more broadly on relationships. So luckily we have a mom here too. So how does a union bring about the benefit of all sentient beings? How did you take that advice and bring it into your life and relationship?
Yeah, that's a great question. One that I never really thought of before I had a child or entered the path to into the Buddha Dharma. When I first heard Geshe-la say this, it really made me reflect really hard on all of the relationships I had before, which was really trying to maintain harmony, love, peace, and trust between two people. And fortunately for my marriage with my husband, Dasang, already had a little person to consider. So it really wasn't just about me, but it was about her also, which was already adding another sentient being to the mix.
And can I just jump in to ask, how old was your daughter when you first met Dasan?
Yeah, she was 6 years old. So yeah, she already had her personality formed and had opinions at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was interesting to see how things kind of molded into what they are now.
So then you decided to marry Dasang. So how do you think about your that advice from your teacher? And so far, does it seem like the union is bringing about the benefit of all sentient beings?
Yeah, so I feel like unlike relationships I've had in the West, this one is very unique. He's Tibetan, born into the Buddha Dharma from the time he was born, literally. And I think what really stood out was his devotion to our teachers, to the Buddha, to the Dharma, as well as the Sangha, so the triple jewel. And that was really our foundation, and that's really what brought us together in Bodh Gaya, which was it's also a very sacred place to auspicious place to meet someone. Of course, people meet there all the time, but I think what really stood out here was his acceptance of my daughter as his own, to love her. There was no question, it was beyond blood. And our highest goal, which is the same, which is enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. So I think that played out in a beautiful way. And we got to exchange a lot of different practices and concepts and learnings at the early stage of our relationship. Whereas in the West, often when I've dated people in the past, it was interest in what the other person liked, or where they'd like to go eat, or perhaps, habit patterns,
Mm.
or, past
Things that seem
relations.
maybe, and you might say those things are a little superficial, right? They certainly sound like that to me.
Yeah, yeah. I kind of feel like we didn't ever get to those conversations in our relationship. Instead, it was talking about the dissolution process, contemplating death every morning, our understanding of the one reality of life, which is aging, sickness, and death, which could possibly seem extremely morbid for somebody who wasn't a Dharma practitioner.
It does. I remember when I started learning and trying to practice Dharma, and I would talk to my mother at times when I was staying with her about dying. She would get quite upset, and then gradually, as she got more familiar with the Buddha Dharma, also she started to recognize, no, actually, it's just reality, like you said, the one
Mhm.
reality that binds us human beings together: birth, aging, sickness, and death. Now, can I ask you a question?
Shoot, go ahead.
So as a monk, okay, as me, I won't try to represent all monks, but we do see in the texts, in the Buddhist own words of the sutras, right, a lot of emphasis on abandoning, overcoming, working to reduce our attachment. And of course, this includes sexual attachment or desire, or seeing bodies, other people's bodies, as attractive and beautiful and desirable, I should say, maybe is, you know, a better word for it, because there is beauty that's real, right? Then you met Dasang there in Bodh Gaya, the place where the Buddha himself finally succeeded in overcoming his desire and abandoning his desire. So, how do you think about attachment and the big emphasis in the Buddha Dharma on it being a kind of enemy, or at least something that prevents us from having the highest, deepest levels of happiness in your relationship? Do you think of it as something that you're trying to work with, contend with? Do you see it as something that you even have that isn't even an issue to begin with, or how do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's very many different ways of looking at attachment. I think in our case, I mean, the larger truth of our lives as, Piyali and Dasang is the fact that we will age, we will not be youthful and tight-skinned and, healthy.
Mm-hmm.
All our lives, and aging, sickness and death are coming for us. And even within the last 3 years that we've been together, we have seen sickness, um, in our little family, as well as our dear friends, some who have suddenly gotten stage 4
Mm-hmm.
cancer or other kind of ailments. And then
Mm-hmm.
so there's that aspect where we
And
do
just
know.
to be clear, this is a relatively young person you're thinking of in yourself being, you know, just not even middle aged, right?
Correct. Yeah, and so I think, yeah, exactly. So I think that we have experienced that, so we definitely know that that's in the horizon. It's coming. We just don't know when. And I think as far as like attachment, as in will this relationship work out or not? I mean, I think that because dharma and our goal is so profoundly important, it's our non-negotiable, which is our Dharma practice, I feel like it creates this certain level of commitment. I mean, it's just very basic, you know, if we cannot help each other all the time, do not harm, which also means dishonesty or other things, which I guess were things I was insecure about in the past. But it's just a given, you know, we trust each other so completely. Our commitment stands tall and strong to our teachers, our masters, and to each other. And of course, you know, our deep conviction in karma, which is what has brought us together. And then as parents to a child that fully depends on us, I think this has really bonded us in a way that's beyond, you know, wondering about what would happen. And I feel like that brings a lot of relief. So I think the attachment or the very cliched clinging doesn't really exist in a sense that I probably experienced before.
That's very interesting, and clearly both you and your husband are very dedicated, sincere Dharma practitioners and have a good understanding of the Buddhist teachings, especially those fundamental principles that you have just referred to: recognition of impermanence. That one day you will separate, everyone will separate. We will leave this entire world behind, and as Shantideva so poetically says in his great text, The Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, all will become nothing. Right? And I really well, I commend that you have such a strong commitment to sharing the Dharma, to deepening your practice and understanding of the Dharma, and that you've been able to bring, make that the core of your marriage and your union. So it does sound like there is a potential there to benefit at least many sentient beings, but I guess all sentient beings ultimately, if you really can use this as a platform to progress more rapidly, more successfully towards full awakening. So I wonder, have you seen that happening? Do you feel like this, your marriage, your relationship has helped your practice? And you just talked about not having this kind of cliche clinging. So maybe, if you've really noticed a change there, that sounds like something that's improved, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do think that my marriage has been a very, very wonderful addition to my practice for sure. In many ways. I mean, that's such a big question, but I think it's helped me identify and go inwards with a lot of the crap that I've carried in this life and probably many, many lifetimes. And it's helped me work on my crap, my habitual patterns, the things that have repeated in my life in like my workplace or with previous partners or with my parents, sisters, friends, and things like that. So it helps me identify it and then like, you know, attempt to drop it.
So
Um,
it's sort of like the way that you relate with your husband gives, it's like a stage where you can see these old habit patterns acting out, and essentially have more self-awareness. And then I guess it sounds like because there's so much trust and just such a positive support with that connection, that you're able to really put some effort and change yourself, drop those negative habits. Is that what you're saying?
exactly. Yeah,
Mm,
exactly that.
very cool. I mean, I can see in a sense how that could work, because what I've noticed living in different monastic communities, and of course, in case someone has the the misunderstanding or question even of, well, what's it like for celibate monastics when they don't have relationships, and how are they doing, learning to live with other people and drop their compulsive or destructive habits? Well, that kind of question is a misunderstanding. It comes from a misunderstanding because, well, of course, monastics also have relationships, and I can also see how now they're not romantic relationships, but I can also see how in the different monastic settings I've lived in that you're right, similar things like you still have a chance to see these habits, and you because you're it's just the nature of being in a long-term committed relationship, of course a very different kind, but it's still you're with people, your teachers, you have a relationship with them, your classmates, you have a relationship with them, your fellow, it depends of course on the structure of the particular monastery or nunnery, but in the large Tibetan monasteries, that the population of the monks, the sangha, is divided up just in terms of our living situations into these house blocks or dorms, or they call them kongsen is the Tibetan word, right? So
Mhm.
you have a very deep relationship with the other members of your kongsen, and that can be anywhere from a handful, a couple dozen of other monks, and the largest ones have over 1,000 just in one kongsen. So those are like your family as much as anything could be, and I've frankly with my own classmates feel like I've developed a kind of depth of love and care that I never knew was possible. So that's so cliche that people say often in relation to your spouse or your marriage, a kind of deep relationship. But just with my own classmates, I felt that to be the case. And again, it's kind of this indescribable bond of trust, like seemingly similar to what you're saying. It's just we kind of always know that we're there for each other, right? And you don't really have to talk about it. You don't really have to question it. You never say "I love you," but it's just that they're there for you, and they know you're there for them. And so I can say that you still, that it's something about the profundity of human connection and our need to have connection, perhaps, and just the reality of that. To be going back to the foundation, the fundamental, most underlying concept or truth within the Buddha Dharma is interdependence. That everything about us, from the smallest particle in our bodies to the tiniest, most insignificant thought in our minds, to the deepest emotions, to the wisdom of emptiness, to great bodhicitta, all these things depend on other beings. So just that, because of that fact, then when we're actually living in relationship with others, then yeah, we learn a lot, right? We can see a lot of different things that are true about ourselves that we couldn't see elsewhere. So my the other thing I wanted to ask you about is in relation to your daughter Kaya, and uh, so you've been a mom both as a single mother and now as a couple with a spouse. So how has that changed? And again, in terms of like can we say, your ability to bring dharma into your parenting, has that changed at all with your marriage?
Mm. I think that the addition of having dasang has been incredible, because, well, first of all, we moved to India so that for many reasons, but one of them was for Kaya to learn Tibetan. Um, and she very, very naturally learned Tibetan within a couple of months. But having dasang around really enhances her ability to speak, communicate, and also read Tibetan scriptures, or called pecha, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Um, and so it's been incredible for me to witness um, all of us, well, them praying together in the morning. So I think in many ways we are learning more. And we do a lot of our practices in English and then also some in Tibetan.
Sab su den ba de wa shek ba jik ten ken ba keo du e ka lo yu la na me ba la tang min hom ki ten ba san ge chom den te le ya wa sha ga to ba la cha che lo.
So it's really helped me, it's helped Kaya, and in general, to be able to practice together or to visit monasteries and offer katas to thrones or do Riwo Sancho or some other practices together has been, it's just really made our practice, our lives more dynamic. So I think overall, it's been excellent. And ever since Kaya has moved back home from boarding school, we've tried to, subsidize or supplement her education by doing classes every week. So I've been doing a very, very basic Dharma class, and it's really wonderful to have Dasang sit in on these classes. And I have a blackboard, and we just did the four seals, and I make it kind of interactive with fill in the blanks, match the following with like different words, definitions, and things like that. So it's really cool that we're, brainstorming, working, and engaging with the Dharma.
So do they have like a Dharma Sunday school, a Buddhist Sunday school there in the community that you live in India, or is it more that you have to do it yourself, or do they get some of that at school? How does it normally go? If you weren't giving those classes, is there another way for Kaya to learn about Buddhism?
So in her school, they have assembly every morning, and then before every meal, the kids chant. Um, in the assembly, they take refuge, and um, I mostly think that they know what they're chanting about, but I get the sense that in TCV school they speak a lot about His Holiness. There's a picture of His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. There's pictures of the Buddha Shakyamuni, but I'm not entirely sure if they actually have a Buddhist class until later. I think when they're a little bit older, they have dialectics.
So kind of philosophy or logic training,
Exactly. Yeah.
like debate training essentially.
Correct. And I think maybe you would know a little bit more about this. So they have started doing debate and logic, but it's more with like colors. And I think a little later they learn from the resident Gishe. They have a Gishila who's on campus, and that's when they talk more about philosophy, and then they do the debate with philosophy and things like that. But they haven't got, at least Kaya hasn't gotten to that point yet.
Right, and well, and just not that important to note, but the colors is Buddhist philosophy. I mean, that's where we
Ah.
start in the monastery too, with colors. But I have heard that the TCV, the Tibetan Children's Village Schools, are also experimenting with using this dialectic or debate format for other topics to help them study mathematics and to help them study English or Tibetan or languages. So from what you're saying, it really sounds to me like the main benefit that you're seeing in terms of kind of raising your daughter as a Buddhist, as someone trying to give her Buddhist values and knowledge, and then being benefited by your union, your marriage, is that it really kind of coheres together. You and your daughter and your husband, everyone comes together, and it's this family unit now practicing Dharma. So I just, you know, I want to just ask you and just maybe just reflect on, because it's just occurring to me, maybe that's quite an important part of Buddhist practice that, again, is perhaps missing from a lot of our lives as Western converts or new Buddhists, is to really have our whole family be part of it. How important do you think that is to your own practice, but also just the community, the Dharma community as a whole?
I think it's really important. okay, well, quite frankly, right before this relationship, I was in a relationship with another father, whose kiddo was the same exact age as Kaya. And he was not a Buddhist. I think the more we got into our relationship, perhaps he got a little bit resentful or frustrated that any given free time I, wanted to make it meaningful and include the Dharma in some way. It's the intention. Like, for instance, there's nothing wrong with going to Hawaii or beautiful beaches in Turkey or any of these incredible places in the world. But I found myself feeling that this void that I once felt many years ago before the Dharma kept, like, the gap just started widening, going on these incredible trips, staying in amazing places, resorts and hotels and things like this. When we wake up in the morning and we don't set the proper motivation, which is the goal of attaining enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, I felt like our days ended up being quite wobbly. And of course, traveling or just being together, sharing space, cohabitating means that, we experience being tired, hungry, frustrated after like days of school or work or whatever it may be. And I think that if we don't have this shared motivation, fights, conflicts that can happen, if it's not a major conflict, it can still be something kind of small. But either way, I felt like there wasn't the shared vision of the future or why we were alive. The shared vision of like a larger goal, which is bigger than just today, tomorrow, this week, is really important. And the goal, which is to be of benefit to all beings, and may our body, speech, and mind be drawn towards that goal. I feel like this was definitely missing in a relationship where we wake up and we think, okay, let me take care of my needs, let me take care of my kids' needs, and let me make this day work. It's like not really casting a large net to be of benefit to all beings, or being kind to the people serving us, or try to compromise, accommodate, accept, tolerate, be understanding, lend an ear to your partner who may be having a hard time or being late for work or having stresses in life. So I think that general motivation was missing. So I do feel, as a practitioner, being in a relationship with a shared goal, through the Buddha Dharma, my suffering in a relationship, cohabitating, has decreased by at least like 90% for sure.
That's very, very insightful. Or I mean, I am gaining insight from you saying that, because that's another sign or another piece of evidence for how important it is to have a relationship, but a supportive one, right? Where you have similar goals in mind, where you really want your life to go in the same direction. And I would say that that's true for any organization or community. So any community of people, I should say, which could be a family, it could be a monastery, it could be a workplace, a business, it could be a nation. And so if there's at least some sense of shared values there, some shared vision there for where we want to go, that just contributes so much, right? And that's one of the reasons why the monastic sangha is so valuable, because it gives people who have a certain vision in mind a place to go and join the community and be supported, just like you're saying, where in your prior relationship you didn't have that kind of support. That's like how I feel when I was, I mean, the monastery I am part of is an academic monastery. It's essentially a university
Mm.
and a monastery combined. And in the previous schools, all those places, I sort of felt like what you're saying about, your prior relationship where there was also a lot of suffering because there was something that just didn't quite sit right, or that sense of not fitting in comes down to is a difference in view of what I wanted to do with my life. None of the previous, in Western society, we don't put enlightenment as a goal for our education system, right? But moving into the monastery, that's the goal, right? Your goal is to achieve awakening and then day to day be able to work on the six perfections, developing generosity, developing patience, developing concentration and wisdom, and effort. And those are all really, really deeply embedded into the way of life. And then, of course, the values and views of the other members of the community. So I rejoice that you've been able to find someone who shares those similar visions or goals for life, and that it's really working well for you too. So I wanted to go back and just bring it up a little bit more because I bet there are people out there who might be more curious to hear more about. And full disclaimer, if you think you're going to be uncomfortable hearing a monk talk about sex, then better turn off now. But about this practice or sort of goal of Buddhism to remove attachment, to be left with a mind that is completely at peace and not disturbed by afflictive emotions, which include, of course, the obvious destructive, disturbing things like anger, frustration, jealousy that really burn us up. But then even attachment, which feels pleasant, right, which comes together with pleasant or pleasurable experience, but also prevents the mind from really being at a deep level of secure peace because it has that craving quality to it, right? That I want more, better, right? Essentially, that's or just holding on, right? So that when your loved one is dying or when you are dying, it just holds on and then propels you back into another rebirth. So how do you uh, kind of manage this kind of craving or attachment? Like, well, you were telling me that even Dasang, how he thinks about sex in terms of, well, why don't you tell me what you were saying before we started the discussion?
Mhm. I think that in the West we romanticize so many things, like whether it's culinary arts, like it's the art of cooking. I mean, of course it is, and then the art of sex, um, and they fetishize.
They fetishize everything.
Yeah,
Mm.
a lot of everything is just, it's all about fetishes and what people like and paying so much attention to it. And being with,
And maybe just to
yeah,
offer is just to suggest a perspective that essentially when we say a fetish, what we just mean is a very strong attachment or craving for a particular something particular about a person's body or a certain way of deriving pleasure. But anyway, go on.
exactly. Thank you so much for describing it. Exactly that. And I think that being with a Tibetan nomad, who is a Dharma practitioner, he once mentioned something to me that sex is just uh, two bones and flesh rubbing each other, and no matter what position you do or whatever you do, the result is the same. And it was quite profound because I had never heard it like that in my life. And at some point also I remember asking him about his parents. He described his life living as a nomad, moving from place to place depending on the weather and the food for their yaks and Dree, which is the female yak. They would all just sleep in a big tent, and he saw a lot of his siblings being born. And I had this silly question, and I hope it's okay that I even bring this up. What about romance? Like, how would his parents romance their way into having their next child.
There you go, Piyali. Just ask it. I mean, everyone wonders, right? So, because it's true, people still live that way. People have for thousands of years. Okay, so what was the answer?
He just said that there wasn't much romance. It's an urge, and since it's freezing cold and showering is not a reality for his parents, at least in those days, I guess in the 80s and 90s, that it would just be a quick fix and then they're off to sleep. And so, I mean, his whole life, and then, of course, with the Dharma of impermanence and, our goal of reaching a level of contentment and equanimity, it's really to not pay that much attention to pleasure and pain. And so, literally, when you see an attractive woman or man, or a they them or whoever it may be, it's just really like knowing that aging, sickness, and death is coming for us, and attachment will bring suffering, possession, of course, that too. And sex is something very beautiful that can be shared, and that too is impermanent. And I can't really say, I mean, our relationship, just like any other relationship, has gone through so many phases. And it's so natural in this human condition to want affection, or to cuddle, or recognition, or appreciation for like a good meal, or um, wanting attention from our partner. I mean, these are like tiny things that do exist, of
They're
course.
big.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
tiny but big, tiny but meaningful, and very, again, when you're talking in a wider context of really trying to make your life something meaningful for all sentient beings, I can even see as a monk how those little connections, little pleasures can really be a powerful motivator, fuel to kind of keep going and say, yes, I feel good now. I'm ready to go. Because guess what? I have a body too. I have a brain, right? Dopamine courses through my veins as much as it does through anyone's. And yeah, as monks, we certainly need to find ways to stay happy, right? I mean, the happiness is the goal of Buddhism. So I can definitely see how that could be, and as you say, we want it, right? It is something that people naturally want. So again, from the perspective of like just looking at the text, and even that beautiful way you described, that the way Dasang described what sex is, beautiful meaning. Sorry, maybe that's not the right word. Very, uh, what to say? Uh, I don't know the right adjective to use here, but a very realistic. How about that? The very realistic and practical way that Dasang described sex is just coming right out of Aryadeva's 400 verses, right? He has a whole chapter on overcoming the distorted perception that sees what is unattractive or kind of neutral as being attractive or extremely beautiful. In other words, the sense that, like you're saying, fetishizing a body and the sex act and these things. And one of the that's basically the exact verse or line. I don't have the verse in front of me, but he says, doesn't matter who the person is or what they look like when you actually have the experience of the contact. Well, it's essentially the same for anyone. And then he even goes on to say, and frankly, it's not any different for a dog or a pig. They also see some other dog or a pig. It's like pigs, I think, is actually the example he uses. So a pig sees another pig, they get attracted, they have craving for that kind of feeling and contact, and they experience that pleasure, and then, as you say, it's impermanent, it's over. It's really not any different. And I remember first hearing that, and that was one of the big things I reflected on for a while when I was first took a vow of celibacy, as an anagarika, an eight vow layperson. And I really reflected on that a lot. Every time I started getting attracted to a woman, it's like, wait, I'm just That's no different than a pig. I'm thinking like a pig.
Mhm.
but the cool thing is the way you described it. That's okay. That's natural. It's not. That's not something. There's no judgment there, right? It's not like, oh, you pig, you're disgusting. It's like, yeah, humans are kind of like pigs too.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Wow, that's a wonderful way of putting it. I think that there is a lot of healthy ways of being lay practitioners.
Mm,
Of course, we're not monastic, so we haven't taken vows of refraining, for instance, like dancing together or enjoying music or what have you, but or snorkeling, or I don't know, very mundane family things which we did together. But like I said, having that motivation like made this activity somehow or the other bring benefit, or lead to this paths to enlightenment, to be of benefits to others. So for instance, our family, we went to Thailand, and the first few weeks we spent learning bone setting, like chiropractic techniques, and of course that's to heal people. And then the next couple of weeks we spent on islands, snorkeling, and in the water we saw all of these beautiful sea creatures that we don't get to see on land every day. And as a family, Kaya, Dasang, and I, we recited many, many, many mantras. I mean, the ocean was filled with Manjushri prayers, Avalokiteshvara, just so many prayers, which we were saying
sounds
underwater.
really, really beautiful, honestly.
Yeah, it was quite nice. And then of course, it's healthy. I feel like it's healthy for us, at least, as you mentioned, we're not even middle aged, so it makes sense to be intimate, and it's very sweet and wonderful. But it's not like the way it was before when I was younger, which was more exciting and passionate, and
Mm, mm.
it's not that, but it's something wonderful. And sometimes I often thought about how a lot of this passionate lovemaking was um, kind of premeditated. You think about it and even talk to your partner and you emphasize, like, oh, I would love to try this or that. And today, I think about how if I were to put in that much energy and effort and time into
Mm-hmm.
allocating, time and energy into like that amount of intimacy. I mean, what else could I be doing with that much time?
Well, Piyali, that's a good question. And to be honest and perfectly frank, that was the main question that motivated my decision to ordain. I literally just
Mm,
sat and kind of made the calculation. Well, hey, yes, love and romance is very, very pleasurable. Also, as you're describing, can be a factor or a support for having a deeply, deeply meaningful, powerful Dharma practice, and often is. But when I really look at how many hours I have in a day, how many hours would I be spending with a partner, with a wife or girlfriend, and then if we had kids, and how many hours do I want to be spending studying or meditating or doing other service related activities that are somehow more somehow feel, at least to me, as being able to contribute what I can to others. And I just said, I can't in my own self. So maybe I'll just say, if for anyone listening, I fully, again, like I said, appreciate and rejoice in the way that you found your family, the family life you have, the romantic life you have to support your Dharma practice, and your husband's and your child's. And I also know even the Buddha, right? He gave lots and lots of space for the lay community. It's an essential part of what's called the fourfold Sangha. We have fully ordained monks, fully ordained nuns, and then lay men and lay women, right? Holding the five, or from 1 to 5 lay vows, which again includes refraining from sexual misconduct. It does not include refraining from sexual activity altogether. The 10 non virtues, the 3 of body, 4 of speech, 3 of mind, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, right? Sexual misconduct does not mean all sexual activity. So, of course, it's not a non virtue. The Buddha didn't describe it or list it as a non virtue. So, as you're saying, you even use it to produce more virtue, right? So that is wonderful. But some people will just see in their for themselves that, to kind of feel like you're living your life with integrity. It's a decision, how you want to practice the Dharma, and that's just a personal decision that each person has to make. But I do want to just say that it is very much an open decision. It's an open possibility. I just feel like there are a lot of people, especially in the West, who kind of feel like the monastic life is just very obscure. They just don't really know how to get into it, how to do it. Well, I'll just let you know it's not that hard to get into if you really have that calling, or you really feel like, hey, maybe that way of living could be more satisfying or more fulfilling. Yeah, definitely don't cut it off, because hey, guess what, you still get all the benefits of having a community, having relationships, having lots and lots of happiness, and you also get more time to devote to Dharma directly. I'm advertising monastic life. That's all. But that's the final word from me.
I think that we all do have aspirations that in our next life, whether it's lay, monastic, of course, monastic is so much more conducive to single pointedly, focusing on the Dharma. Of course, there's monastic life and relationships with fellow, peers and whatnot, which pull you into, I guess, a sliver of worldly life, I guess. But it would be such
But
a
well, it's certainly not like you literally just decide you take ordination and then the next day every single thought you have is just Dharma, Dharma, Dharma. No, no, no. Of course, that's just
right.
unrealistic. We're still humans, and we still, like you say, have many responsibilities, and different things come up. I'm here taking care of my mother who has cancer now, and that wasn't expected or planned in my, when I first ordained. But I'm happy to do it, and it's part of life, right?
Yeah, it's a great service that you're doing, and of course, it's so important to your mom, to you, the Dharma, and it's a wonderful thing. Yeah, I think, yeah, monastic life is amazing, and I think that I'm tested every single day being a mom and a wife and dealing with these two people in my life. It's amazing, satisfying, challenging, and everything. It's a complete rainbow.
It seems like it, and I've met Kaya several times, and I have absolutely no question that you are doing an excellent job raising her and giving these very meaningful Buddhist values and just your own wisdom and care and love that comes from your practice. So thank you for that, and the world will thank you once Kaya, matures into a very, no doubt, wonderful, kind, human being as she grows.
Thank you.
Okay, any final thoughts?
I don't have any, but thank you. This is a very fruitful conversation, and yeah, makes me reflect on this robust relationship I have with my kiddo and husband. So thank you.
Very good, thank you. Okay, see you next time.
Senjo denpa time da we she se do da wa kwe la cha ze lo di te kwe da si pa so ma che nya me ken chen kwe la cha ze